Her grandson turned her heart medication box into a tip jar with her name still on it. Norma Delaney, retired nurse and widowed mother, didn't say a word. Jason smirked behind the cafe counter, counting crumpled dollars like trophies. By week's end, every cent she'd saved for his future had a new name on Ithis Mother's WW. She'd once held his hand through fever and failure. Now, she held the receipts. And when he tried to cash in her silence, she answered with legal proof and locked accounts. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence, it lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The bell above the cafe door gave a polite little chime as Norma stepped inside, the morning light following her in. The familiar scent of espresso and caramelized sugar lingered in the air. It was the kind of cafe built for selfie-succulent walls, pastel lattes, ironic chalkboard menus. But Norma wasn't here for atmosphere. She had come to see her grandson. Jason stood behind the counter, all exaggerated hand gestures and loud charm, greeting customers like a small-time celebrity. His apron was wrinkled. His hair was styled to look like it hadn't been. Kirahi's girlfriend, or so Norma gathered from the holiday card they'd sent last year, leaned against the bar, phone angled slightly up, capturing the moment. And then Norma saw it. There, right in front of the register, was a plastic pillbox, faded green, compartmentalized, the letters tu and thu still slightly smeared from the years she'd used it. But it wasn't holding pills anymore. It was holding cash. Dollar bills and coins stuffed into the compartments. A label had been slapped across the lid in black marker. Vintage pain relief. Tip if you miss your grandma. Norma stopped. Not just her feather breath, her posture, her memory. For a second, her brain refused to process it. She stepped closer, slowly, the linoleum humming faintly beneath her shoes. Her eyes scanned every detail. It was hers. The hairline crack on the Wednesday lid, the faint smudge of an old pharmacy sticker on the bottom. She hadn't lost it. Jason had taken it. I told you it'd get laughs, Jason said to Kira, loud enough for customers to hear. They love the irony, Kira giggled, angling her phone. It's like boomer chic. A customer in a beanie dropped $2 in the slot marked FRI. Jason made a mock salute, then spun around to froth milk, grinning like he was on stage. Kira zoomed in on the box and whispered, "This one's gonna hit." Olivia, the cafe manager, stood just a few feet away by the syrup station. She saw Norma. Her expression shifted, shoulders tensed, hands paused mid-wipe on a countertop. But she didn't say a word. Norma took another step forward. Her fingers twitched at her side. She could feel the thrum in her wrists, that warning pulse her doctor called vascular stubbornness. Years ago, she might have snapped. But age had taught her something sharper than anger, how to hold silence like a blade. Jason finally noticed her. His smile faltered for a half-second before reforming, wider, faker. "Hey, Grandma," he said with theatrical brightness. "Didn't expect you this early." Norma's eyes didn't move from the pillbox. She didn't respond. Jason shifted. "It's just a joke," he added, as if the explanation would erase the insult. Kira snorted behind him. "She looks like she's gonna tip over, not tip in." That earned a laugh from two teenagers at the corner table. Still, Norma didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the box. The compartments that had once held her blood pressure meds, her cholesterol pills, the tiny white ones she'd been prescribed after her daughter's funeral, the ones that let her sleep through a silence too thick to breathe. Now those same compartments held crumpled bills and irony. "I think we're out of almond milk," Olivia said abruptly, moving past Jason and toward the back, avoiding eye contact with Norma altogether. Another customer came in, dropping a 5 into the box without even reading the label. Jason beamed, triumphant. Norma finally blinked. She turned without a word, walked back to the door, and stepped outside into the gray Seattle morning. The air was damp, sharp with salt and diesel from passing traffic. She didn't fumble for her phone, didn't reach for a tissue. She simply stood there for a moment, letting the cold remind her she was very much alive. And then she began to walk. Not home. Not yet. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere with answers. The quiet inside the credit union was the kind that felt padded, almost reverent soft carpet, hushed keyboards, and the occasional polite clearing of a throat. Norma stood at the counter, purse balanced on one arm, her fingers clasped around a small folder of documents she hadn't touched in years. The young teller had taken her ID and tapped at the screen. "Ah, yes, Miss Delaney. This one's under your name as primary trustee." He paused. "Education fund? For Jason Delaney?" Norma nodded once. The teller stood. "Let me bring Mr. Porter out. He handles legacy trusts personally." A few minutes later, Miles Porter appeared, trim gray suit, rectangular glasses, presence like a courthouse whispered into a man. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. "Norma," he greeted. "It's been a while." She followed him down a short hallway into a glass-walled office where a printout already sat on the desk. He motioned for her to sit. "I ran the report this morning when I saw your name in the queue. Jason's fund is untouched. $86,240.12, including interest. No withdrawals, no activity in 6 years." Norma looked at the number, steady and cold. She remembered how long it had taken to build it. Shaving small amounts from paychecks, birthday money she never delivered. Investment returns she let compound instead of spend. Jason never asked, he just expected. Miles studied her face. "You want it gone?" She looked up. Not startled, just precise. "No," she said. "I want it moved." He didn't flinch. "Transferred?" "Redirected," she said. "To a new beneficiary, or a group of them." He reached for a form. "Any preferences?" "Medical education," she said. "Something local. Something with hands." His pen hovered. "You'll need to name a program." "I have one in mind." Miles nodded, started writing. Norma opened the folder in her lap. Inside was an old manila envelope marked in pencil, in case he ever tries. It held Jason's birth certificate, the original trust paperwork, and her own handwritten note, years old but still legible. No entitlement without character. She didn't hand it to Miles. She just glanced at it and then slid it back. He finished writing, then looked up. "Would you like a statement of change to be mailed to Jason?" Norma shook her head. "Number. Let him find out the way I found the pillbox, by accident." He didn't press further. He simply placed the new forms in a flat manila envelope and set it neatly before her. "I'll file this today. It will be irrevocable once the receiving institution signs." She didn't thank him. That wasn't what this was. She stood slowly, the weight of it all tucked behind her spine like an old scar. Before leaving, she turned back. "Miles?" "Yes?" "You remember Rita?" she asked. "Your daughter's friend? Clerk at the courthouse?" Norma nodded. "Call her if you need anything notarized. She'll understand." Outside, the sky had turned overcast again, typical for late fall in Cedardim, but not dark. Norma didn't open her umbrella. She let the mist settle onto her coat as she pulled out her phone and scrolled to Rita's name. She pressed call. "Norma?" Rita answered immediately, warmth lined with concern. "You okay?" Norma didn't waste time. "You remember what my daughter died from?" There was a pause, a shift in the air. "Endocarditis. It started with a mist infection, didn't it?" The ER brushed it off. Norma's hand tightened around the phone. "That's right." She trusted the system. Thought they'd pay attention, but they didn't. Another silence. "Not awkward, just heavy," Rita said softly. "What do you want me to do?" "Help me make sure the next girl doesn't have to beg for a diagnosis." Rita exhaled like someone setting down something sharp. "I'm with you." Norma ended the call and walked slowly down the sidewalk, past the bank's glass facade. Her reflection moved beside hers, light, measured, wearing a coat that had survived more winters than Jason had degrees. She paused at the corner, and for the first time in years, she smiled without warmth. Norma hadn't planned to check her social media that evening. Most nights, she preferred the ritual of decaf tea and a crossword, the same way she had for years. But something about the walk home from the credit union had shifted her rhythm. Her hands moved with that familiar clinical steadying show she used to prep medication tray sand now. They moved with the same focus across her tablet screen. It took only 2 clicks to find it. Kira had posted the video to her public account at caffeine.chaosix hours earlier. The thumbnail showed Jason's hand dramatically pointing to the pillbox. The caption above read, "Found Grandma's secret stash. KP. Number vintage relief number. OG pain juice." Norma pressed play. Jason, grinning, leaned into the camera. When your grandma leaves her meds in your apron and you make them part of the brand. Then a cut to the pillbox on the tip counter. Zoomed in. Clear as day. Her name. N. Delaney, printed in faded pharmacy font. Barely rubbed out. The camera held on it long enough for anyone to read. Kira's voice piped in. This one's for the boomers who raised us and still owe us, Jason added. Vintage pain relief, baby. Tip for trauma. The video ended with a customer dropping in a 5, laughing on cue. A split second later, the outro, Jason bowing, Kira flashing peace signs, and a quick overlay of the cafe's name and address. Norma didn't flinch. She tapped the corner of the screen and downloaded the file. Then she opened her Files app, added the timestamp, and renamed the video. Exhibit A. Unauthorized public use, N. Delaney. She attached it to an email and typed, Miles, see attached. Note my name visible at 013. I give no permission for this content to exist. ND. Send. She placed the tablet face down and folded her hands in her lap. Silence gathered like a shawl over her shoulders. Minutes passed. Then her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. Just a name. Olivia, cafe manager. Hi, Norma. I just saw the post. I didn't realize the pillbox was yours. I'm sorry. Norma read it twice before replying. You do now. She left it at that. Another message blinked onto the screen, but she didn't open it. In the other room, a clock ticked. Soft, measured, indifferent. The next morning, Miles replied with a single sentence. I'm drafting the exploitation complaint. Now digital likeness and misattribution. He attached a document. Washington State Civil Use of Image and Identity Guidelines. Elder Protections Addendum. Norma printed it. She didn't need to read every word. She just underlined the clause that made her most still. Knowingly using the likeness or medical identity of an elder for public entertainment, parody, or financial gain without consent may be considered grounds for exploitation under current statute. There it was. Plain. Legal. Unmistakable. Later that afternoon, while watering the small basil plant on her windowsill, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a DM. From At Caffeine. Chaos. Hi. We took the video down. Hope you know it was all in fun. Didn't mean anything personal, no hard feelings. Norma didn't reply. She simply took a photo of her pill, box empty now, sterile, lid-taped shootand, uploaded it to her rarely used Facebook account with one line of text. This held my heart medication. You used it for tips. She made the post public. Then she logged out. The city outside moved without her. Delivery vans idled. Cyclists coasted past. Somewhere, a bell on a cafe door chimed. Inside, Norma opened her filing cabinet and slid the printed law beneath the folder labeled Reclaimed. She didn't slam the drawer. She closed it slowly, like a nurse sealing a chart. The kitchen table was covered in small, neat piles of paper. Bank statements, birthday receipts, photocopied deposit slips each, one labeled in Norma's tight, no-nonsense handwriting. There was no anger in her posture, no urgency in the way she moved between sheets. Only clarity, the kind she hadn't felt in years. She sat with a pen in one hand and a calculator in the other, watching the numbers build like sediment. $40 for the scooter Jason never said thank you for. $100 for his prom tux rental when his father claimed he'd forgotten to handle it. $2,000 she'd transferred to his account his first year of college when he claimed the meal plan had been cut. And on it went. Christmas checks, car repairs, surprise fees, forgotten reimbursements. When she finished, the total stared back at her from the lined yellow pad. $20,815.23. Norma circled it once, then wrote beneath it in block letters. Repayment in full emotional interest pending. She didn't add her name. She didn't need to. She placed the statement into a plain envelope. No return address, no note, just paper. The weight of accounting finally accounted for. That evening, she drove the envelope to Jason and Kira's apartment complex, a squat brick building with modern lofts that looked anything but modern. She didn't go to the door. She didn't wait for lights or sounds. She just slipped the envelope into the metal mailbox labeled Gentry in blocky black sticker letters, and then she left. By morning, Jason's Instagram was on fire. A blurry photo of the envelope, torn open and dramatic on their countertop, was paired with a caption. Imagine your own grandma sending you an invoice like you were a contractor she regrets hiring. The boomers are really out here trying to tax childhood, Kira commented underneath. Maybe we should bill her for emotional trauma and almond milk. A few of Jason's usual followers dropped laughing emojis, some tagged friends, but most replies came from strangers. You used her pill box as a tip jar. Sit down. I hope she does send you a bill with interest. That's a strong woman. Respect. The post was deleted within the hour, but not before someone screen captured it. Rita texted Norma at 9:14 a.m. Got it. Saved as PDF. Time-stamped. Not just cruel. Public. Let me know when Miles needs it. Norma replied with a thumbs-up emoji. She didn't need to say more. Rita had always understood subtext better than most attorneys. Later that afternoon, Norma stood at her shredder. She fed in every duplicate receipt she'd saved, paper sliced into soft, static. The sound was rhythmic, therapeutic, final. When she was done, she poured herself a cup of peppermint tea and opened her journal. She turned to a clean page and wrote only one sentence. I gave without conditions. He received without pause. She set the pen down and stared out the window. Rain fell lightly against the pane, soft and silvery, turning the city's edges to watercolor. She didn't feel empty. She didn't feel vindicated. She just felt finished. Across town, Jason sat hunched at the kitchen table, scrolling through comments he couldn't unsee. Kira paced nearby, muttering about how people are too sensitive, but her voice had lost its usual volume. Jason looked at the paper again. The amount. The title. No signature. Just fact. He crumpled the page, then flattened it again, unsure what gesture made him feel less small. For the first time, he didn't post about it. Norma sat across from Miles in the same glass-walled office, but this time the air between them felt different, lighter. Not easier, but unburdened. The transfer is complete, Miles said, setting the signed packet between them. All funds from the original trust have been redirected. The scholarship is officially active. First award goes out next month. Norma nodded, slow and deliberate. And the name? Your daughter's, as requested. Miles tapped the title at the top of the trust, the Lila Delaney Memorial Nursing Grant. Her eyes rested on it like it was something sacred. Lila's name, in print again, not in stone, not on paperwork for a death certificate, but at the top of something that would grow. She always wanted to finish nursing school, Norma said quietly. But then Jason came, and she never got back there. Said she'd try again one day. Miles didn't interrupt. He waited. She worked nights, Norma continued. Changed schedules around Jason's fevers, his field trips, every damn dentist appointment. She gave up the classroom to work urgent care because they offered benefits sooner. And when she got sick herself, she trailed off. The weight hung there, unapologetic, heavy. Miles spoke gently. I know. They sat with the silence. Then Norma reached into her bag and pulled out a printed letter, the bio of the scholarship's first recipient. She handed it across the desk. 36, single mother, 2 kids. She's re-enrolling this fall. Miles read the short paragraph aloud, slowly. Admitted to Seattle General's Bridge program. Background in home health. Working weekends. She won't see a cent of Jason's name, Norma said. But she'll feel the difference. Later that week, a local lifestyle columnist picked up the story. A half-page article with a photo of the recipient smiling in front of a classroom chalkboard, and a headline that read, Local grandmother honors daughter with bold legacy shift. Norma's name appeared midway through the article. No quotes, just a simple line. Norma Delaney, former nurse and mother of the late Lila Delaney, redirected a private family education trust into a need-based nursing scholarship in her daughter's memory. That morning, Jason's phone buzzed with a dozen notifications before breakfast. He clicked the link, and there it was. His future, his fundry purposed, reassigned, renamed. The money wasn't just gone. It had been given away. His jaw tightened as he read it again, hoping he'd misunderstood. But he hadn't. There was a picture of the recipient, standing in scrubs beside a whiteboard. And under that, Lila's name, his mother's name, spelled out in bold. No mention of him. Not one. Across the kitchen, Kira read the article over his shoulder. Wait, she said, blinking. Isn't that? Jason cut her off. Yeah, it is. She pulled out her phone and immediately posted a story, tagging Norma. Some people rewrite history instead of fixing it. Weird flex, Grandma. It was live for all of 2 minutes before the comments rolled in. You mocked her meds and now you're pressed she made something beautiful? This isn't a flex. It's restoration. No one owes you inheritance, especially not when you use it for content. You tipped yourself out, sweetie. By the 10th minute, Kira deleted the story, but someone had already saved it. Norma didn't post anything. She didn't need to. She was busy reading the thank you letter that had arrived that morning handwritten from the scholarship recipient. It ended with one line. I hope I do her name justice. Norma folded the letter gently and slid it into the side pocket of her journal. She didn't cry, but she did exhale deep and long, like something inside her ribs had unknotted. Miles called that afternoon just to confirm the final trust updates were filed and permanent. Anything else you'd like added? He asked. Norma thought for a beat. Then, yes, include a clause that no one with the last name Gentry is eligible. Ever. There was no anger in her voice, just clarity. The takedown order left Norma's inbox at 6:03 a.m. Miles had already prepped the form digital exploitation, unauthorized use of identity and medical reference, tagged under Washington State's elder, dignity protections. Norma reviewed it line by line, then signed with the same steady precision she'd once used to chart medications at midnight in trauma wards. At the bottom of the order, there was a checkbox labeled, Request full platform review of content creator. She checked it. By 8:17 a.m., at Caffeine, at Chaos, the account Kira used to post most of their cafe skits was reported by over 200 users. It began quietly. 1 reshare, then 10. Then a quote tweet that said, That tip jar was her actual pillbox. This isn't satire, it's humiliation. Within an hour, the video was flagged enough times for the hosting platform to freeze the page for investigation. Kira's follower count stalled, then slid, then vanished completely. By noon, the cafe's Yelp page had been flooded with reviews not about the coffee, but about the ethics. A few were angry, but most were heartbreakingly simple. My grandma died last year. I wouldn't have laughed either. Mocking medication for tips isn't clever, it's cowardly. Not everything old is content. At 2:12 p.m., Olivia now clearly removed the tip jar from the counter permanently. She issued a quiet internal memo to all employees, effective immediately. All joke containers, parody signage, or unapproved display items are prohibited. Dignity is not discretionary. She didn't mention Norma by name. She didn't have to. Rita, watching from the sidelines with a courtroom clerk's precision, posted a thread that landed like a quiet gavel strike. That pillbox held her heart medication. It was used for tips, and no one asked her permission. Read that again. The post went viral overnight. Norma didn't comment. She didn't retweet. She simply logged out of every platform and cleaned her stovetop, methodically, like she always had after a long day. Steel wool, gentle circles, no skipped corners. The next morning, she dressed with care gray slacks, soft navy sweater, and the silver clip her daughter once gave her before a long shift. She pinned it to her collarbone and stepped into the same cafe that had sparked it all. The door chimed. The same polished floor, same syrup-sweet scent, same too loud playlist looping a chill-hop track like nothing had changed. But something had. Jason was behind the counter, but he didn't speak. His mouth parted, then shut again. Kira was nowhere in sight. 2 employees she didn't recognize busied themselves behind the pastry case. Olivia stood near the espresso machine, her hands wrapped around a clean towel, eyes wide when she spotted Norma. The room fell quiet. Norma walked to the counter without a word, looked around. The pillbox was gone. In its place, a ceramic jar with a handwritten sign, Elder Support Fund, Dignity Matters. She nodded once. Not approval, just acknowledgement. Jason started to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a defense, but his voice caught. Norma looked him in the eye for exactly 1 second, long enough for him to feel it. Then she turned toward Olivia. The manager stepped forward. Her voice wavered. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know. Not until after. Norma tilted her head, examining her like a chart in triage. And now? I do, Olivia replied. Norma gave a single, satisfied nod. She placed a $5 bill into the new jar, turned, and walked out. Outside, the sky was clear, the Seattle chill softened by late sun. Across the street, someone pointed not in mockery, but in recognition. Not everyone knew her name, but now, they knew what she wouldn't allow. The manila envelope was already waiting on Norma's porch when she returned home from the cafe. No postage, no courier, slip-hand delivered. Her name written in tight block letters across the front. She recognized the handwriting. Inside, a 2-page copy of an employee incident report, dated 4 weeks prior. The complaint had been submitted to the cafe's HR liaison by Olivia Reyes, general manager. It detailed multiple instances of inappropriate conduct by Jason Gentry. Misuse of customer-facing materials, unauthorized public filming on site, and one line that stopped Norma cold. Used a former family member's real medication box as a prop without consent. The final line had been underlined and inked twice. No corrective action taken. Norma stared at the page, then refolded it carefully and slid it beneath her laptop, where the folder marked filings already waited. She opened a blank email and addressed it to Miles with the subject line, "Unseen complaint, please advise." Less than 30 minutes later, his reply appeared. "Already reviewing. Will contact State Labor Board by morning. This counts as workplace negligence." Norma leaned back in her chair. Through the front window, the clouds were shifting above the rooftops, dark and flat like slate tiles about to break. She didn't sip her tea. She didn't smile. She simply waited. By midweek, news traveled fast. Jason's suspension was confirmed in an internal memo citing pending external labor inquiry. Olivia had sent a second note to staff, apologizing for the delay in addressing her original concerns. No names were mentioned, but none had to be. Jason's meltdown came not in person, but in pixels. A vertical video surfaced on a gossip account within the day filmed by Kira, though her voice never appeared. Just Jason's RT. Shaky camera, fluorescent lighting, a cramped apartment kitchen. Jason pacing shirtless holding a beer can, eyes glassy. "She was old anyway," he shouted at the lens. "Like, what, I'm not allowed to joke about my own grandma? She didn't even use that box anymore. It's vintage, not sacred." He laughed, ons sharp, empty. "I swear, people treat old folks like porcelain now, like they don't even remember how to laugh." The clip cut out mid-rant, but not before it caught one more thing. The reflection of Kira in the microwave doorstone, faced, unmoving. The video hit over 100,000 views in 12 hours. Norma didn't respond publicly, but she posted one sentence, her first direct comment since the takedown. "Still here. Still deciding." Nothing else. No hashtags. No emojis. Just words. Within an hour, the post had been shared across advocacy accounts, legal discussion threads, elder care communities. Commenters didn't yell. They observed. "She's a nurse. She's used to pain. That's why she waits. There's nothing scarier than a quiet elder with proof. This is the voice we ignored too long. Let her decide. She earned it." That evening, Rita called. She didn't waste time on preambles. "I saw the HR document. They thought it would disappear," Norma replied. "Everything disappears until someone makes a record of it." Rita exhaled. "You're doing more with silence than I've seen lawyers do with courtrooms." "I'm not after punishment," Norma said. "Just reflection. They built a mirror, now they can look in it." There was a pause on the other end, then a soft, "You always did take vitals better than anyone." Later that night, as Seattle streetlights flickered to life, Norma lit a small candle on her windowsill, the same spot where Lila used to line up her textbooks during nursing school. The flame moved gently, like breath. She didn't cry, but she did whisper, just once, to the space her daughter left behind. "They didn't fire him because of me. They fired him because of the truth." She closed the curtain, picked up her pen, and under the word deciding, she began to list every document they never thought she'd find. Jason stood in front of the ATM like it had insulted him. He swiped his card again, jamming the buttons harder this time. The screen blinked the same unblinking message. "Account closed. Please contact financial institution." "What the hell?" he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. No one was behind him. The sidewalk was quiet except for a passing bus and the distant clink of bottles from a recycling bin. He tried the banking app. Nothing. Spinning wheel. Then a second alert. Your login access has been restricted pending verification of primary account holder. Jason's jaw tightened. That account had been opened in high school joint, just for emergencies, his grandma had said. He'd used it sparingly, sure, but lately he'd leaned on it to patch rent. A safety net. And now? Gone. He called the bank, fast walking down the block. 20 minutes on hold. A soft-spoken rep finally answered, verifying security questions only to say, "I'm sorry, sir. The account has been formally dissolved by the primary holder. All associated access is legally revoked." Jason nearly dropped the phone. "But it's mine. I had access. There was never full ownership," the rep clarified. "Only permission. And that permission has been rescinded." Jason hung up before the rest of the sentence could finish. That night, Kira opened the mailbox and found their rent check returned in a bright red envelope stamped, "Non-sufficient funds," tenant advised. She stared at it for a full minute before tossing it onto the table without a word. Jason just stood there, silent, his fingers clenched into fists. Oh well. Across town, Rita sat beside Norma on a bench outside the courthouse annex, holding a small folder of papers she'd brought in her own car. "All credit lines are frozen," Rita said, double-checking the list. "Your name can't be used to anchor anything. Not a lease, not a card, not even a prepaid student account." Norma nodded. "Good." Rita folded the folder closed and looked at her. "He'll notice. I'm counting on it." Oh well. 2 days later, Norma stood at a modest podium in a sunlit community college auditorium. The nursing scholarship ceremony was quiet, informal, just a few chairs, some refreshments, and 5 scholarship recipients in simple clothing, seated with nervous pride. Norma hadn't planned to speak, but the program director nudged her forward with gentle eyes and a microphone. She cleared her throat once. "I used to believe that giving was simple," she began. "You love someone. You help them. You trust them. You invest, and if they fall, you pick them up, but—" She paused. Her voice didn't tremble, but it did, thin, just slightly. "If they mock the hand that steadied them, if they turn your giving into a punchline, what then?" The room was still. She looked directly at the row of young students. One woman wiped her eye. Another nodded slowly. "I wasn't just a punchline," Norma said. "I was your beginning. Every dollar that built this fund started with care. With nights I didn't sleep. With years I didn't ask for anything back." A single tear slid down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it. "I give it now," she said. "Not to the loudest, but to the ones who remember that care is something you carry forward, not something you monetize." She stepped back. The applause came slowly, but when it came, it was real. All. That evening, in the quiet of her living room, Norma sat beside a stack of thank you notes from the scholarship recipients, each handwritten, each earnest. Rita texted her a screenshot of a recent comment Jason had posted under one of his own deleted rants. "Guess I'm not her legacy after all." Norma didn't reply. She picked up one of the notes, written in looping blue ink. "I will become the nurse I always needed. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to begin again." She folded it gently and placed it in the same folder as Lila's birth certificate. Then she lit a small candle on the windowsill and let it burn. The knock came just after 7. Not loud, not hurried, but unmistakably his. Norma stood at the kitchen counter, hands steady over a cutting board. The knife paused above a slice of pear. She didn't flinch. She didn't call out. She waited until the second knock-on beat longer, a little softer. Then she wiped her hands, set down the towel, and opened the door. Jason stood on the porch, damp from Seattle drizzle. No umbrella, sweatshirt clinging to his shoulders like regret. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. She stepped aside. "Come in," she said. Her voice was smooth, not warm. He entered like a child returning to a classroom after suspension, unsure if he belonged, waiting to be told so. His shoes squeaked faintly on the wood floor. "I just want to know," Jason began, his words jagged, "why you're doing this." Norma didn't answer right away. Instead, she crossed the room, opened the drawer beside the microwave, and pulled out a small object wrapped in linen. She unrolled it on the dining table slow, careful. The pillbox, faded green, familiar cracks. Her name, N. Delaney, still barely visible on the underside. Jason's breath caught. She looked at him. "Would you like to label it again?" she asked. His lips parted, but nothing came. His shoulders dropped as if someone had knocked the air from his lungs. I didn't mean, he started. Yes, she interrupted. You did. He sat down suddenly, as if his knees had given. His hands trembled, fingers threading into each other until they turned red. I didn't know it would go this far. I thought it was just content. Norma's voice didn't rise. Number, you thought it was yours to use. He looked up, eyes glassy. I need help, he whispered. Her expression didn't change. I'm helping, she said. Just not you anymore. The silence that followed was not angry. It was honest. Jason's mouth opened, closed. His face crumpled not. A tantrum, but something smaller. A collapse. He stood, slowly. No rush. No protest. He looked down at the pillbox one more time before walking to the door. Norma didn't follow him. Didn't watch through the window. She sat at the table for a long time after he left, her fingers lightly resting on the box's edge. Then she folded it back into the linen and slid it into the drawer. Not hidden, just stored. All. 2 days later, a packet arrived at Miles's office via courier signature required. It was from Jason. An official notice of intent to pursue legal review of the fund's redirection. The language was messy, templated, clearly copy-pasted from a template blog or vague online legal site. Still, it was a move. Looks like he wants to try pressure, Miles said over the phone, his voice low and unfazed. He's arguing you acted out of emotional retaliation, that your decision was personal. It was, Norma said, and legal. Miles paused, then smiled. Then I'll respond in kind. He filed a packet in return, 32 pages, screenshots, receipts, video stills, witness statements, the HR complaint, the scholarship paperwork, the original trust with Norma's untouched power of disbursement, each notarized, each time-stamped. The next day, Norma received a copy for her records. On top was a note from Miles, written in blue pen. The law favors those who document. Yours is airtight. All. That weekend, Jason received a message from a potential employer, the first serious one in weeks. It read, after reviewing your public record and current legal entanglements, we've chosen to go in a different direction. He deleted the email. But a second one followed. This one from a freelance client. We were unaware of your past involvement with exploitation claims. We can't move forward. It didn't matter how fast he deleted. It was already done. Not in outrage, not in scandal, but in quiet removal. Allu? Norma stood outside in the early evening light, pruning the rosemary plant she kept beside the porch. Rita pulled up beside the curb, rolled down the window. Thought you should know his letter's been withdrawn. No further filing. Norma didn't look surprised. She snipped a stem and said calmly, paper threats don't work on nurses. Rita smiled. That's a quote. No, Norma said. That's a lesson. She tucked the sprig into her palm and went back inside. The courthouse conference room was beige in that specific way only government buildings could manage, too clean, too colorless. Norma sat on the left side of the long folding table, hands folded over a slim navy folder, the pillbox tucked neatly inside. Across from her, Jason wore a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit his shoulders. His lawyer, someone fresh-faced and too caffeinated, flipped nervously through a half-inch stack of paper. None of it mattered. None of it had weight. The judge, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose and a face that didn't tolerate nonsense, looked between the two parties. Mr. Gentry, she said, you've brought this claim under emotional distress due to financial loss stemming from what you allege was retaliatory action taken by your grandmother. Is that correct? Jason cleared his throat. Yes, Your Honor. I believe I was unfairly cut out of an account that had been promised to me. Promised or expected? She asked. He blinked. Implied. From years of verbal. The judge held up a hand. And your distress, as you define it? Jason hesitated. Public humiliation, loss of income, strained family relationships. She made a show of it. Norma didn't look at him. Instead, she opened her folder. Inside were still-sate images in total, each printed on soft gloss cardstock. She passed them to the bailiff, who handed them to the judge. Image 1, the pillbox on the cafe counter, full of dollar bills. Image 2, a freeze frame of Kira's video. Norma's name visible at timestamp 013. Image 3. The Instagram post of the mock invoice, captioned with laughing emojis. Image 4. A screen capture of Jason's rant. Guess I'm not her legacy after all. Image 5. Olivia's HR complaint. Image 6. Rita's viral post. This was her heart medication. Image 7. Yelp reviews referencing elder mockery. Image 8. The scholarship article, Jason's name nowhere in sight. Norma said nothing. The judge studied the stack for a full minute, then looked at Jason. "This isn't satire," she said, flatly. "This was theft. Of dignity, not dollars." Jason opened his mouth, but the judge raised her voice just enough. "She gave you time. She gave you money. She gave you her name. You turned all three into punchlines. And now you're upset the audience left." Jason's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge shook her head. "Case dismissed with prejudice. There is no basis for review, and I strongly suggest you consider what else might be revoked the next time you build a brand on someone else's blood pressure." The gavel fell once, sharp. Jason flinched. Norma didn't blink. Outside, in the cool brightness of the late afternoon, a local reporter approached as Norma exited through the side entrance. She wore the same gray coat she'd had on in the scholarship photo, collar folded neatly, pin shining near her shoulder. "Miss Delaney," the young woman asked, holding up a recorder. "Just a few words on what today meant?" Norma paused, looked at her, not unkindly, but she shook her head. "I've said what mattered," she replied. Then she walked to the curb, where Rita's car idled, and stepped inside without another word. By morning, the article ran anyway. "Grandmother wins dignity case against grandson." This wasn't family drama. This was legal clarity. It was picked up by 3 other regional outlets, and by evening, the story trended not with hashtags, but with headlines. "The pillbox that started a legal reckoning. When silence became strategy. What care really means and what it's worth." All. In her living room that night, Norma sat with a cup of warm milk and a handwritten letter from one of the scholarship recipients. It ended with, "Thank you for fighting for your own name. It gives the rest of us hope we can fight for ours." Norma closed the letter and set it beside her journal. Then she reached for the pillbox, taped it shut, labeled it "Retired." She didn't put it back in the drawer. She left it on the table. Visible, just once more. The office smelled faintly of lemon oil and old carpet. It wasn't fancy, just tidy. Shelves lined with legal binders, a ceramic mug holding too many pens. Norma sat across from Miles, the window behind her framing a soft Pacific drizzle. She was dressed in navy again, the same sweater from the hearing, now worn like armor that no longer needed to defend just to finish what was owed. Miles leaned forward, setting a new file between them. "Annual disbursement terms finalized. It'll operate as a rolling grant, renewable each year with leftover funds compounding interest. You're listed as sole directive authority until your designated advisory panel activates." Norma nodded, eyes skimming the title. "The Lila Delaney Endowment for Compassionate Care." Below that, a simple mission statement. Because care is a beginning, not a transaction. She placed a small card onto the desk. A name, handwritten in deliberate cursive. "Chris Morales," she said. "Rita's son." Miles smiled slightly. "He's in the RN program at UW, right?" "Top of his class," Norma said. "Patient. Sharp. Never filmed anyone's grief." "I'll draft his seat onto the advisory panel," Miles said, already scribbling a note. Norma turned the next page in the file. Her eyes narrowed at the section marked "Eligibility Exceptions." She uncapped her pen and underlined one phrase. "No direct descendants or named family members may receive funds unless nominated anonymously by a non-family member and reviewed by a full panel vote." She added a note in the margin. "This includes Jason Gentry." Miles read it and nodded. "You want that name blacklisted officially?" Norma didn't hesitate. "I want it erased from the ledger the way he erased my face." He didn't ask why. Instead, he passed her a thin manila envelope. "And this is your revised will." She slid her glasses on and flipped to the signature page. "I've updated the clause," he continued. "Your asset shown, pension, intellectual property all flow into the foundation. It's airtight, not contestable." Norma signed without ceremony. Then softly, "Let it begin and end with care." Miles closed the folder slowly. You know, most people draft revenge disguised as charity. You wrote a future. Norma shook her head. I wrote a correction. And bows. That afternoon, she met Chris in the cafe across from the college bookstore. He arrived early, tall, kind-eyed, still in scrubs from clinical rotation. I thought it was a prank, he said, holding the envelope she'd mailed. Me? On the panel? You showed up when others filmed, Norma said. That's the difference. He tucked the envelope into his backpack like it was breakable. You really don't want family involved? She stirred her tea once. Family was the first to forget what I was worth. He didn't argue, just nodded. And bows. Across town, Jason opened his email to find a flagged message from the legal office of the foundation. Per donor instruction, your name has been formally disqualified from consideration for future financial assistance under the Lila Delaney Endowment. Any inquiries will be redirected. He stared at the screen. There was no anger this time, just the emptiness of a door that would never open again. And bows. Later that week, Rita visited Norma's porch with a small potted orchid in hand. From the recipient in Wenatchee, she said. She couldn't afford delivery, so she asked me to bring it. Norma took the orchid in both hands. Tell her I never liked bouquets. This is better. Rita laughed, then paused. You ever think you'd do all this? No, Norma said. But then again, I never thought he'd use my medication for tips. They both stood in the doorway a moment longer, listening to the hum of the city and the distance buses, birds, wind in the gutters. Before Rita left, she turned back. What do we call this phase? Norma looked out over the yard. Not revenge, she said. Reversal. And when she went back inside, she did something quiet but irreversible. She deleted Jason's name from the emergency contact section on her medical file. She replaced it with Chris. The bench was simple. Unpolished granite, curved just slightly in the center. No filigree, no brass inlays, just a soft gray stone, cut wide enough to rest a body carrying too much weight. It sat beneath a maple tree outside the Old Women's Health Clinic on 19th and Alderth, same clinic where Lila had once worked, years before her diagnosis. The place hadn't changed much. New coat of paint, a few raised garden beds out front, but the bones were the same. Norma stood beside the bench, hands tucked into her coat sleeves, watching as a maintenance worker gently pressed the bronze plaque into the cement backing with careful hands. When he stepped aside, she knelt not easily, not quickly, but fully and brushed a gloved finger across the etched words, in honor of dignity that shouldn't have to be earned. Donated by the Lila Delaney Endowment for Compassionate Care. Behind her, Rita adjusted a folding table near the sidewalk. A single bouquet sat in a mason jar, next to a tray of paper cups and a carafe of coffee. No stage, no crowd, just a quiet dedication. A few people came. A former nurse who'd trained Lila in her first year. A city council aide who'd approved the permit. 3 students from the nursing college down the street. One of them, barely 20, scrubs still crease-stood, with a clipboard held against her chest like armor. Rita nudged Norma gently. That's Sarah. She's the one who wrote the application letter. Cried when she found out it was your daughter's name on the endowment. Norma nodded, then motioned for the girl to come over. Sarah did hesitant, eyes bright, voice trembling when she spoke. I just wanted to say, I didn't know her, but I wish I had. Norma studied her messy ponytail, chipped polish on one thumbnail, the flushed intensity of someone trying hard not to cry in public. She would have liked you, Norma said. Sarah blinked fast, and then, it means something, you know, sitting down, having a place like this, not in a hallway, not on a curb. She looked at the bench again, eyes wet. I don't want to be a nurse who forgets what matters. You won't, Norma said, steady. You already know. Sarah nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, her first patient evaluation, signed off with a note. Gentle, thorough, asked permission before touching every time. She left it tucked under the bouquet. When the others had gone and the coffee cooled, Norma stayed behind with Rita. The sun had dropped behind the buildings, casting long blue shadows across the pavement. From her purse, Norma pulled a small bundle linen wrapped and carefully sealed with ribbon. She placed it on the bench beside the flowers. Rita looked down. The pill box? She asked, softly. Norma nodded. Now engraved, now done. The box sat quiet, glinting slightly where the new seal caught the light. The words on its lid were barely visible, but Rita caught them. Not for sale, not for shame. Norma stood up slowly, pressing one hand against the bench as she rose. I used to think healing only happened in hospitals, she said. But sometimes it starts at a place you never got to rest in. Rita didn't reply. She simply placed a small bunch of marigolds beside the box Lila's favorite and stepped back. The two women stood in silence for a long moment. The street was quiet, except for wind moving through the branches overhead. Somewhere down the block, a bus hissed to a stop. Footsteps passed, but no one interrupted. Finally, Rita spoke. Are you ready to go? Norma nodded once. She has somewhere to sit now. That's enough. They walked back to the car in silence. Behind them, the plaque caught the last of the sunlight, and the engraved pillbox held nothing but Eric's purpose fulfilled, its history no longer borrowed. The knock at Norma's door was not like Jason's had been. It was lighter, hesitant, like it didn't expect to be answered. Norma opened it anyway. Kayla stood on the porch, phone nowhere in sight, hair pulled into a tight braid, hands stuffed into the sleeves of a jacket too thin for the weather. Her eyes darted once toward the doorbell camera, then away. I'm not here to film, she said. Norma didn't move from the threshold. Then why are you here? Kayla looked down at her shoes, scuffed white sneakers with the laces tucked in instead of tied. Because I saw the bench, she said. The clinic one. And the post about it. And she swallowed. I knew. Back when we did the video, I knew it was yours. Norma didn't answer. She didn't raise an eyebrow or soften. I told Jason not to show your name, Kayla went on, the words picking up speed like a train just beginning to break. I told him it felt wrong. He said it would be funny. Said no one would know. But I did. I knew. And you filmed it anyway, Norma said. I did. Kayla's voice cracked around the edges now. And I've thought about it every single day since it started falling apart. Not because I got backlash. Not because I lost followers. But because... She finally looked up, her eyes damp and tired. Because I wouldn't want someone doing that to my grandmother. Norma stepped aside, just enough to let the cold air slip past her. Come in, she said quietly. They sat at the kitchen table. Same one where Norma had unwrapped the pillbox. Same place she'd listed every gift, every dollar, every betrayal. Kayla's eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on the drawer handle that still held the box. But Norma didn't reach for it. You don't need to speak publicly, Norma said after a long silence. That kind of apology isn't real. It's performance. Kayla nodded slowly. Then what do I do? Norma slid a small envelope across the table. The application, she said. For the scholarship. Kayla blinked. You're giving it to me? I'm giving you a chance to earn it, Norma replied. The same way Lila earned her spot in that clinic. The same way others have earned theirs. You don't get credit for crying at the bench. You get credit for choosing a new map and walking it. Kayla stared at the envelope like it might burn her fingertips. Her hands shook when she picked it up. I don't deserve this, she said. Norma nodded once. Correct. But you might grow into it. The room went still again. And then Kayla broke. The tears weren't loud. They weren't pretty. They were quiet, uneven, and unfiltered. Her shoulders shook in small, embarrassed tremors. She clutched the envelope like a lifeline. Not looking up, not apologizing again, just grieving whatever version of herself had led her here. Norma let her cry. She poured 2 cups of tea in silence and placed one in front of Kayla without a word. Then she sat back down and looked out the window, watching the branches sway against the gray light. I never needed an apology, she said softly. I needed someone to stop performing long enough to listen. Kayla wiped her face, still trembling. I'm listening now. Norma nodded. Then that's the beginning. Outside, wind scattered yellow leaves across the front steps. A delivery van rumbled past, the driver slowing just enough to glance toward the house before turning away. Back at the table, Kayla finally took a sip of tea. It was too hot, but she didn't complain. And, later that evening, Norma opened her journal and turned to the final page she'd left blank at the start of it all. She wrote one line. Redemption isn't mine to give. But I left the door open. She closed the cover. Not with a thud, but a click. Then she turned off the light and left the envelope on the table for once, not addressed to her. The envelope came with a rustle, slipped beneath Norma's front door just before dawn. Pale light hadn't yet filled the windows, and the air still held the hush of night's retreat. She found it during her morning ritual tia steeping, robe knotted, slippers soft against the hallway floor. It was from the credit union. Inside, a single-page printout. Final distribution summary legacy account. Delaney, Norma A. Line after line. Disbursements, transfers, endowment rollovers, legal deductions filed and verified. The total remaining balance read $0. Norma stared at the number for a long time. Then she folded the paper neatly and set it beside the sink, where the steam from her mug curled upward like breath from a body finally at rest. No debt, no secrets, no reserves for second chances. Just the clean quiet of a ledger closed. And, later that morning, she lit a candle in the front window. Not for ceremony, not for display, just for memory. Its flame flickered against the glass, reflected faintly against the photo still framed on the side table, Lila in scrubs, her smile wide, her exhaustion evident even then. Norma stood with one hand lightly on the windowsill, watching the wick hold steady. "I kept you alive," she whispered. "Not in pieces, in purpose." There was no reply, but the silence felt answered. And, at noon, a knock came at the back door, 2 short raps and 1 long. Chris. He stepped inside with a sheepish grin and a package under one arm, wrapped in brown paper, edges taped tight. "You don't have to hang it," he said, "but I thought you might want to see." She peeled the paper away slowly. Inside, a photo, framed in clean walnut. A group of 6 young women and 2 men, all in navy scrubs, stood in front of a community college sign. Their postures were proud, their expressions humble. Above their heads, in a banner, first recipients of the Lila Delaney Grant for Compassionate Care. Norma's hand hovered over the glass, not quite touching. "She's not in the photo," Chris said, "but she's in every one of them." Norma nodded. "It's better that way." And, that afternoon, the mail arrived with a square cream envelope among the usual flyers. It was from Olivia, typed, short. "Miss Delaney, the cafe has formally retired our tip jar model. In its place, we've introduced a donation jar for elder care programs in Seattle, especially those focusing on chronic care, dignity, and long-term aid. The sign reads, 'Real care starts here. With respect, Olivia Reyes.'" Tucked inside was a photo. Same cafe, same counter. But instead of a pillbox or cheeky signage, there stood a simple glass jar, and behind it, a printed note with a small gold heart at the bottom. Norma didn't cry, but her throat thickened. She placed the photo beside Chris's frame, not as trophies, but as proof. And, that evening, she sat in her favorite armchair as dusk filtered through the blinds, her journal balanced on one knee. The page was already titled, "Closure Not the End, but the Enough." She wrote, "I held his future in my hands. I gave it shape, and when he turned away from it, I shaped something else." Then below it, "Balance isn't about revenge, it's about return. And I've given back to her, to them, to myself." The candle on the sill flickered one last time. Norma stood, blew it out gently, and carried the cooled wax to the kitchen. Tomorrow she would walk to the clinic again. Not to mourn, just to sit. On the bench that bore her daughter's name. Beside the pillbox that held no pills. Behind the name they could no longer bend. And just before bed, she checked her inbox one last time. No messages, no requests, no demands, only quiet. And for the first time in a long time, Norma went to sleep with nothing left to withhold. The ground was soft from overnight rain, the soil dark and rich beneath the roots of the maple tree outside the clinic. Norma knelt carefully, her knees cushioned by the folded blanket Rita had tucked into her bag before she left. No crowd this time, no dedication, just stillness. The bench waited beside her, its stone, cool and silent, the plaque catching morning light. In honor of dignity that shouldn't have to be earned, Norma reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the pill box wrapped in linen, ribbon retied one final time. She held it in her palm. It looked smaller now, lighter, like a relic no longer in need of reverence. There was no speech, no ceremony. She cleared a small space in the mulch at the base of the tree and pressed the box down into the earth with both hands. Then she sat back on her heels and exhaled. That was all. Honest. She didn't notice her phone buzz until she was walking back toward the sidewalk. It was a call from Miles, she answered without breaking stride. "You've gone national," he said, with a voice that sounded half proud, half awed. A long-form profile just hit the wire. Headline reads, "Dignity isn't disposable, one nurse's stand for the right to be seen." Norma didn't stop walking. "They quote the bench," he added, "and the foundation. Interviewed 2 of the grant recipients. And," he paused, "no mention of Jason. Not even once." "Good," Norma said. "That was the point." Honest. At midday, she returned to the clinic not for business, just to sit. She settled onto the bench slowly, the granite cool through her coat. The street hummed quietly behind Heron occasional bus, the sound of a crossing signal, distant traffic. She let her hands rest palm down beside her, grounding herself in the stone. And then she heard footsteps, not hurried, not heavy, just even, light. A young woman approached tote slung over one shoulder, scrub pants slightly too long, white shoes already smudged from early shifts. She didn't notice Norma at first. She sat on the other end of the bench and pulled out a textbook, Advanced Nursing Ethics, a highlighter, a water bottle with initials in Sharpie. She flipped to a marked page and began reading, mouthing words as she scanned. Norma watched for a moment, then turned her gaze forward again. The pill box, buried beneath their feet, held no pills, just memory, just return. Einer. Back at home that evening, Norma lit a final candle, not to mourn, to mark. She opened her journal to the very last line, under the heading, "For the record," and wrote, "They used my face, I used my name, and I still own both." Then she closed the book, not with a snap, but with something quieter, like resolve, like rest.